Right now, as you're reading this, Windows 12 is taking pictures of your screen, not metaphorically, not as some background process you'd never notice, literally capturing what's on your display at regular intervals and feeding it into a local AI system that builds a searchable record of your digital life. Every document you opened, every website you visited, every message you typed, every photo you looked at, all of it cataloged, indexed, and stored on your machine in a database that, and this is the part that should give you pause, has already been demonstrated to be accessible in ways Microsoft absolutely did not intend. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I'm about to show you. Let me walk you through exactly what's happening inside your PC. Let's talk about what this feature actually does at a technical level. Because once you understand the mechanics, the privacy implications stop being theoretical and become very, very real. The feature is called Recall. If you've heard of it before, that's because it debuted as a flagship selling point for Copilot Plus PCs running Windows 11. And now it has made its way into Windows 12 as a default pre-installed component. On the surface, Microsoft describes it as a way to help you find anything you've ever done on your computer. You can search for that spreadsheet I was working on 2 weeks ago, or the article I read about mortgage rates using plain language, and Recall will surface it. Sounds useful. Until you understand what it takes to make that work. Here's what Recall is actually doing in the background. At configurable intervals, by default every few seconds, it takes a screenshot of whatever is on your screen, not a compressed thumbnail, a full fidelity image capture. It then runs that image through an on-device OCR engine, which stands for optical character recognition, meaning it reads all the text visible in that screenshot and extracts it. That extracted text, along with metadata about the application you are using, the time, the window title, and a reference to the image itself, all gets written into a SQLite database, stored locally in your user profile folder. DB, everything you've seen on your screen is in there. Now, Microsoft's defense here is that this is all local. It doesn't leave your machine. The data stays on device. And technically, that's true by default. But here's where it starts to unravel. Security researcher Kevin Beaumont, one of the most credible voices in the Windows security community, published a detailed breakdown in 2024 showing that the Recall database was not encrypted at rest. It was sitting there in plain text, readable by any process running under your user account. Any malware, any poorly written application, any script a bad actor convinced you to run, all of it could access the full history of everything you'd ever seen on your screen. Beaumont called it a perfect info stealer target, and he was not being dramatic. Think about what that actually means for you. Not in the abstract, specifically. You logged into your bank account. Recall captured a screenshot. The OCR engine read your account balance, your account number, the last 4 of your card, and the name on the file. It's all sitting in that database right now. You had a conversation with your doctor over a telehealth portal. Captured. You reviewed your salary information in an HR system. Captured. You opened a message from someone you love with details neither of you would share publicly. Also captured. Stay with me here, because it gets worse. In April 2025, independent security firm Truffle Security released a proof of concept tool called Total Recall. Yes, that's actually what they named it, that could silently extract the entire Recall database in under 30 seconds, compress it, and exfiltrate it to a remote server. No admin privileges required, just user-level access. The tool was released publicly to demonstrate how dangerous the attack surface was. And yes, it worked on default Windows 11 Copilot Plus configurations. Microsoft had patched some of the issues by the time Windows 12 shipped, but the core architecture, screenshots, OCR, local SQLite database, remains fundamentally the same. The patches addressed some access controls. They did not change what the feature is. Then, in September 2025, the UK's Information Commissioner's Office, which is Britain's data protection authority, issued a formal advisory urging consumers to audit AI-assisted features on their PCs and warning that even locally stored behavioral data could create compliance risks for anyone handling sensitive personal or professional information. That's a government body, not a blogger, not a YouTuber, a regulatory authority issuing a warning about this exact category of feature. Here's what really bothers me about all of this. The people most at risk from a feature like this are not the average user who's just browsing Reddit. It's the small business owner reviewing confidential contracts, the freelance accountant processing tax returns, the nurse charting patient notes in a home office telehealth setup, the journalist communicating with a source, the attorney reviewing privileged documents. These are people with real, legitimate reasons to demand that their computer is not cataloging every pixel that crosses their screen. And most of them have absolutely no idea this feature exists, let alone that it's running. Microsoft will tell you this feature exists to help you to make your PC smarter, more personal, more useful. And I want to be fair and actually engage with that argument before I dismantle it. The user experience pitch is genuine. There's a real problem Recall is trying to solve. We all have that experience of knowing we saw something, an article, a document, a product page, and not being able to find it again. Search is bad. Folder structures are chaos. If you could just describe what you remember seeing and have your computer surface it, that would be valuable. I get it. I understand why the engineers who built this thought they were building something people would love. But here's what Microsoft is not telling you about why this feature exists at a business level. Recall is the data collection layer for Copilot. Full stop. Microsoft has spent tens of billions of dollars building out its AI infrastructure in partnership with OpenAI. Copilot is the consumer face of that investment, and for Copilot to become indispensable, for it to be something you can't imagine working without, it needs to know you. Not just the documents you share with it, not just the prompts you type. It needs to know your patterns, your habits, what applications you use and when, what kinds of content you engage with, what your workday actually looks like minute by minute. Recall is how it learns that, on device today. But the architecture is already built to pipe that into cloud AI services the moment Microsoft decides the business case justifies it. And they've already started with features like Copilot Plus recommendations that require sending behavioral signals to Microsoft servers. Think about that for a second. The product isn't Windows, you are. Your attention, your behavior, your data, that is the product that makes Copilot valuable. And Microsoft has built an always-on screenshot machine into your operating system to capture it. Look, I'm not saying there's some shadowy conspiracy here. Microsoft is a corporation doing what corporations do, building toward a business model that generates recurring revenue from AI services. That's not a conspiracy. That's just capitalism with a surveillance subsystem. But it's worth calling it what it is, especially when the company presents it as a productivity gift rather than a data harvesting mechanism. Here's the metaphor I keep coming back to. Imagine hiring an assistant for your home office, and that assistant, without telling you, keeps a detailed journal of everything they observe while they're there. Every phone call you take, every document they see you reading, every visitor who comes to the door. They tell you it's to help them serve you better. And maybe it is, but you didn't ask for that. You didn't agree to it. And you definitely didn't agree to that journal being stored somewhere a burglar could potentially read it. That's Recall. That's the deal Microsoft made for you without asking. When I dug into the actual settings and documentation, I found something that reinforced this reading. Recall is enabled by default on Copilot Plus hardware, which covers all Windows 12 PCs with the required NPU, meaning neural processing unit. The dedicated AI chip, opting out, is buried. On some configurations, you need to navigate 4 layers deep into settings to find the toggle. On others, it's not in the obvious location at all. It's in a separate privacy menu that most users will never open. The default behavior is collection. The opt-out requires knowing the feature exists in the first place, and if you felt something was off, if you noticed your PC running warmer than expected, or the disk activity light blinking when you weren't doing anything intensive, or just had that uneasy feeling that something in your machine was more active than it should be, you were right to pay attention to that instinct. You were not being paranoid. So what can you actually do about this? Let me show you, and I'm going to be specific. All right, here's what you actually came for, and I'm going to be as specific as possible, because vague advice on something like this is useless. I've organized this into 4 layers. You can do all 4 in about 15 minutes. You don't need any third-party tools for the first 3, and none of this costs anything. Let's go. Layer 1 is disabling Recall itself, which is the priority. Press the Windows key and the letter I at the same time to open settings. Once you're in settings, click on Privacy and Security in the left sidebar. Scroll down until you see a section called Activity History. On some Windows 12 builds it may be, labeled AI Activity or Recall and Snapshots depending on your update version. Click into it. You'll see a toggle that says Save Snapshots, or on some builds it's phrased as Let Recall take and save snapshots of your PC. Toggle that off. It will ask you to confirm. Confirm it. Now that stops new captures from being taken. But here's what a lot of guides skip. It does not delete what's already been collected. For that, you need to go back into that same menu and look for a button or link that says Delete Recall Data or Clear All Snapshots. Click that and confirm. Depending on how long Recall has been running on your machine, this might take a few minutes. Let it finish. Once that's done, the database is cleared. Pro tip. After you've deleted the data and disabled new snapshots, open Task Manager. Press Ctrl, Shift, and Escape simultaneously, and look in the Processes tab for anything named AIX Translator, Screenshot Manager, or Recall Snapshot. If any of them are still running, right-click and end the task. This won't survive a reboot since you've disabled the feature, but it clears them from this session immediately. Total time, 3 minutes. Cost, 0. Layer 2 is tightening your activity history settings more broadly. Still in settings under privacy and security, look for a section simply called Activity History. Here you'll see options related to what Windows stores about your recent app usage, browsing activity, and file interactions. Turn off Store My Activity History on this device. If there's also an option that says Send My Activity History to Microsoft, make absolutely sure that is turned off as well. Then click the button to clear Activity History. Again, confirm it. This is separate from Recall, but feeds into the same ecosystem. Microsoft uses this activity data to populate the timeline feature, which most people have never used consciously, and to improve Copilot's recommendations. Turning it off limits what the operating system knows about your daily patterns. Time, 2 minutes. Cost, 0. Layer 3 is locking down diagnostic data, and this one surprises people because they don't realize how much it covers. In Settings, go to Privacy and Security, then Diagnostics and Feedback. You'll see two options: Required diagnostic data and Optional diagnostic data. Required is what it sounds like. Microsoft collects some basic telemetry about system stability and hardware configuration. And while there's ongoing debate about exactly what required means, you cannot disable it entirely through the GUI on Windows Home. What you can do is make sure Optional is turned off. This is where the behavioral and usage telemetry lives. Turn it off if it's on. While you're in this section, also look for a toggle labeled Tailored Experiences. This is Microsoft using your diagnostic data to show you personalized ads and suggestions within Windows itself. Turn it off. There's also an option called View Diagnostic Data. If you're curious, click that. You'll see what's actually been sent. For most users, it's more than they expected. Time, 2 minutes. Cost, 0. Layer 4 is a registry level lock for advanced users, and I want to be upfront. This is more technical. It requires editing the Windows registry, and if you're not comfortable doing that, skipping this layer is completely fine. The first 3 layers address the main exposure. This 4th layer adds extra enforcement. If you want to proceed, press Windows and R simultaneously to open the Run dialog. Type Reget It and press Enter. You'll get a user account control prompt. Click Yes. Navigate to HKEI, Local Machine, then Software, then Policies, then Microsoft, then Windows AI. If the Windows AI key doesn't exist, right-click on the Windows folder, select New, then Key, and name it Windows AI. Inside that key, right-click in the right panel, select New, then DORD, 32-bit value. Name it Disable AI Data Analysis and set its value to 1. This creates a group policy style enforcement that prevents recall from being re-enabled by automatic updates or system processes. An important protection, since Microsoft has pushed recall back on for some users through feature updates even after they turned it off. Close the registry editor. You do not need to restart for this to take effect. Now, here is something I need to address before you go and turn everything off. This guide is specifically about recall and behavioral data collection, the screen monitoring and activity tracking features that have no bearing on your computer's security posture. Windows Defender, Smart Screen, and Windows Security in general are not what we're talking about here. Those features protect you from actual threats, malware, phishing, ransomware, and you should absolutely keep them enabled. Turning off Recall does not weaken your security. Turning off Defender does. Do not confuse the two. I also want to acknowledge that if you're working in an enterprise environment, your IT department may have policies that govern these settings, and they may be centrally managed via group policy or Intune. In that context, some of these changes may be overridden automatically, or they may violate your organization's device management policy. Check with your IT team before making changes to a work-managed device. And if you handle particularly sensitive information, legal documents, medical records, financial data subject to regulatory oversight, you may also want to look at paid endpoint privacy solutions, or speak with a qualified IT security professional about your specific compliance requirements. The steps I've outlined are appropriate for most individual users and small business owners managing their own machines. They're a starting point, not a comprehensive enterprise security audit. The total setup time across all 4 layers is roughly 15 minutes, and it costs nothing. If you want to add a 5th layer, there are reputable third-party tools like O&O Shutup 10++, free, no installation required, runs as a standalone executable, that give you a comprehensive view of every privacy-related setting in Windows and let you configure them from a single interface. It's well regarded in the privacy community and has been for years. Just make sure you download it from the official O&O software website to avoid imposters. Here's the bigger principle I want to leave you with, because this isn't really just about one setting in one operating system. What we've been talking about today is a shift in what personal computing actually means. For most of the history of PCs, your computer was a tool. It did what you told it to do and nothing else. The idea that your machine might be autonomously recording your activity, building a behavioral profile, and making that available to corporate AI systems, even locally at first with cloud integration coming, represents a genuinely new relationship between you and your hardware, one that nobody voted for, one that was decided by product managers in Redmond and shipped to you in a feature update. And the thing I want you to take away from this isn't fear. Fear is not useful here. What's useful is clarity. You now understand what recall is, what it does, why it exists, and how to stop it. That knowledge puts you in the driver's seat, not Microsoft. There are millions of people making exactly these kinds of informed decisions about their digital environment right now, choosing to audit their settings, choosing to understand what their hardware is doing, choosing not to accept the defaults just because they're defaults. You're one of them now. That's not paranoia, that's digital literacy, and it's increasingly a survival skill. You started this video with a feature running on your machine that was photographing your screen every few seconds and storing the results in a searchable database. You leave it with 4 specific actions that shut that down completely. Delete what was already collected and put a lock on the door so it can't quietly come back. That's a meaningful difference. That's yours. The direction of travel is clear. AI features will continue to get more integrated, more ambient, more hungry for behavioral data. Windows 12 is not the end of this story. But every time you make a conscious choice about what runs on your machine, you push back against the idea that your computer exists to serve someone else's data pipeline. Your machine, your terms, not Microsoft's. Do this today, not tomorrow. Go into settings right now while you have the steps fresh and get through at least the first 2 layers. It takes 3 minutes. And if this walkthrough saved you from having your most sensitive on-screen data sitting in an unprotected database, then it was worth every second. If this is the kind of content you want more of, deep dives into what's actually happening inside your OS, not the sanitized version Microsoft puts in the press release, subscribe and hit the bell. I cover these issues the moment they're confirmed, not 3 weeks later when it's already old news. And drop a comment letting me know, did Recall come pre-enabled on your machine or had you already turned it off? I read every single one of those comments, and your answers actually shape what I research next.